Hi, I'm Irene with Osprey Photo Workshops and Tours, and this is part 12 of a series of programs on wildlife photography. This topic is going to be about approaching wildlife. There are a lot of similarities between a hunter and a photographer. Both use knowledge of animal behavior, animal signs like game trails, rubs and scrapes, roosting sites, etc. Both may possibly use decoys, cover scents, baiting like corn or salt licks, game calls like duck or turkey, blinds or hides, and possibly ghillie suits where you look like a tree. The only caution I want to mention is that if you're on federal property, you can't put up blinds necessarily without permission or bait or do anything like that. And if you're trying to work on private property, you've got to make sure that you get permission from the owner. And these things may also be prohibited on that property. The main difference between a hunter and a photographer is the distance from the subject. Hunters talk in 200, 300, 100 yards from their subject. We're talking about feet. The photographer often requires a distance to the subject too close to avoid detection. That means that success in many cases is based more on gaining acceptance than concealment. However, at times, with sensitive or nervous subjects, or if hunted, you may need to rely on concealment like a blind or ghillie suit. Another thing to mention is that the greater distance between the camera and your subject, the more atmospheric conditions can interfere with image sharpness. I've definitely seen heat ripple, dust, haze, mist, fog, moisture in the air, smoke, etc. Approaching your subject, don't walk directly towards it, don't stare at it. Observe the animal's movements. Try to get an idea of which way he's moving and then take an indirect route to intersect his path. Move slowly, keep a low profile, pause periodically, meander, act disinterested, emulate the subject's behavior or movement, play around with the bushes a little bit if he's eating. Don't make any sudden moves. If the animal looks concerned, you've got to stop. If he stops his activity, you've got to wait. You've got to look elsewhere. You kind of be unconcerned, but you're keeping a kind of an eye on him. You want him to go back to what he was doing before. If he doesn't, and he starts to move away a little bit, and then goes back to what he was doing before, that's one thing. But if he takes off, he runs away, he moves a great distance away from you, he's not doing what he naturally would be doing, then you've got to quit your project. Avoid noises like rock shifting. I observed in the Canadian Rockies 2 fellows that saw an elk and go running up a hill after him. Running wasn't a good idea to start with, and they were knocking rocks down the hillside. That's not going to work very well for approaching that elk. Avoid wearing shiny objects, noisy clothing, perfumed soaps, things that are not familiar in the environment. If you've got an animal that has a high sense of smell, a good sense of smell, approach downwind. And photographing from the water can often give you an advantage from a boat, a kayak, a canoe, or just wading in the water. And I'll show you an example of that later. Photo blinds. They can be placed on land, but they can also be placed in the water. And Gerlich had a really neat blind. I did get one. I've tried to use it in one location that I had hoped to use it, but it was in a lagoon, and the bottom is so soft that you would go down to your knees into the mud and get stuck. So that wasn't going to work. It's a great blind for shooting eye level with your subjects. I also had problems in tidal areas. I have used a blind in the water before in Utah. It was near Bear River National Wildlife Refuge. And I had a standard stand-up blind for the ground, but I put it on a series of styrofoam floats. And I could move it into position slowly because I wanted to get pictures of that pie-bill grebe that you see there. It was so used to me that it would cover up the eggs, keeping them warm from the nesting material. It would go off, swim, catch a fish, come back, uncover the eggs, and sit back down on the eggs. In the upper right corner, you have an example of semi-permanent blinds that were basically, I'm using a wooden frame with camouflage material over top. Wherever you put a blind, you want to put it in a place that you're going to expect to see animals on a regular basis, a feeding area, a pond, something like nesting site, something like that. Just plopping it in the middle of the field is not going to work. You also want to observe which direction you want to place the blind in so that you have a good background and you have good lighting at the time of day the animals are present. For the spoonbill, the quaddy, they were both done for blinds that were like that. You can also get a hunting blind like the one below on the left. You can adapt it to photography with camo netting, etc., and you can get pictures like the deer and the skimmer below. The top two manufacturers make a really cool blind that you can sit in. It has a chair built inside. It kind of rolls up over you. It's lightweight. It can be folded up and put into a sack. It can be easily moved from one location to the next since it's so light, and it's very comfortable to chair blind. All these pictures that you see here, the squirrel and the wren and so forth, were all done using this particular blind. I often work near feeders. I'll have a setup of some sort. I might have a vertical log that I might bait with, say, mealworms or sunflower seeds or suet. Suet might attract that little woodpecker there, and that's what happened. Sometimes a wren might come in for mealworms or a bluebird. I attach small branches with berries and flowers to create perches. I attach them maybe to the feeder itself, or I attach them to tripods that are near the feeder and create a setting for them to come into to take advantage of food that I've hidden somewhere in a lot of cases. For instance, in the case of the wren below. The raccoon is working on what I call my jungle gym. It was a long log that I found at the park. I got one end propped up on a tripod, the other end is over there on that feeder. And raccoons are very, very dexterous. And he managed to work his way along that log. He walked along the log and he's trying to get to that suet. Recently, I've used a tripod with a branch attached, uh, and I use what was called a clamp. Wimberley makes them, you may see them advertised in, say, uh, yeah, B&H Photo or Adorama or something like that. You attach one end to the tripod, you hook your branch or whatever you're going to try to use for the bird to sit on with the other end of that clamp. And that's what I did in the two cases above. I lots of times put them near feeders so the birds keep coming to around that same area and they check things out. And that's what happened with the little chickadee here. He wasn't on one of those branches, but he was nearby on another tree that was near the feeder. And so I got that shot of him taking off. And the rabbit loved to come around the bottom of the feeders and get some of the seeds. But he also spent a lot of time in that particular area eating what he would normally eat would be grasses. And that's where I got that picture. Talk about the benefits of tripods. You get sharper images at low shutter speeds. Your focus can be more precise because the camera is right there, the image is right there in front of you, so it's easier to examine the image and refine composition. And you're ready for action, you're not fatigued. In other words, you don't lower the camera and then all of a sudden the action happens and you miss it. Note, that tripod I'll talk about in a minute, but it does not have a center post. Some people like monopods for flexibility. You can sort of create a human tripod by kind of putting the leg out in front of you and using your legs as the back part of the tripod. Wimberley makes a little attachment that helps you balance the center of gravity of your lens over the monopod better. You can also get monopods with feet. I hate to say it, but I am not as steady with a monopod as I would like to be. Let's take a look at some of the desired features of that tripod you saw. It needs to be lightweight carbon fiber, able to support, however, your longest, heaviest lens. You want to make sure it's sturdy enough. It's quick to set up. The legs lock firmly. You want it to reach eye level without using any kind of center column, as you saw with that last picture. Some of them will go very low to the ground. Mine has a little pin at the top of the legs where you can pull them out and lower the camera almost flat to the ground. I happened recently to add leveling bases to my tripods. That allows you to work in conditions where the ground is not level. Say you get your tripod just about level, but it's not quite. Well, you can use those little uh, leveling base to get your camera horizontal where you want it. I also use these little quick release plates on the bottom of my ball heads or gimbal heads, and we'll talk about them in a minute, but I can quickly attach them to the top of that leveling ball. Don't forget that you may want to check with your manufacturer about whether you should have stabilization on when you're using a tripod. It varies with the camera and the manufacturer and the lenses and how still that tripod is. With a lot of the situations that I have where I am moving the tripod, not the tripod around, but the camera around, I use sport in terms of my stabilization mode in my Nikon camera, but it may vary for you. On the top of the tripod, you've got two choices. You can have some kind of ball head like this Arca Swiss ball head. It's large, it's a monoball. It has one knob that you can turn to loosen that ball and reposition it. You can lock it into place or you can pan with it. But that takes some skill and that takes using that ball over a long period of time. And if it gets dirty or it's very cold, the movement is not smooth. So you're better off with a gimbal, which is the one on the right side of the frame here. You get much more fluid movement. You balance the lens. It's great for panning. This is a Wimberley brand. It's one of my favorite, but you can get other brands as well of this type of gimbal head. For a great video to describe how to set up the system, your lens system on a gimbal, there is a little website that you can go to. Basically, it's Wimberley's website, and you can get a little video on how to balance your lens just perfectly to use it. A flimsy tripod, you may as well leave at home. So often I have people that come with a flimsy tripod, and it's not easy to set up, and it's easy to knock over, and if the wind comes along, boom, there goes the tripod and the camera. Lots of times it stays in the car after the first first location that we go to, or it ends up in the trash can. Photographing from the water is a special situation. I said lots of times animals are more cooperative. Boats, however, are unstable platforms, so make sure you use that image stabilization. Use faster shutter speeds than you might normally use for that situation, continuous autofocus, subject tracking, and shoot a long burst of shots to make sure the subject is sharp and positioned in the frame where you want it. As opposed to trying to fill the frame with the subject, I like to leave an area around it to compensate for my movement. I don't want to cut off, say, for instance, the tail of that jaguar. I can crop and post and get the subject in the frame where I want it to get the composition what I want. In an open boat, make sure you carry some protection for your camera equipment from water spray. A rain poncho, plastic bag, whatever. Typically, I keep the lens hood on to protect the lens element from any kind of water that might splash, but you want to make sure it's tight and it doesn't fall off into the water. I carry paper lens tissue to absorb any water that would get on the lens of the camera. It works a lot better than microfiber cloths. At least for me, it does. If you're on a double-decker boat, shoot from the lower level. When I go to Bay Bowls in Newfoundland, the boats are double-decker. I go to that lower level because it does not sway as much with the waves. The exception would be when they get near high cliffs, the boat is stable, and then you can go up to the upper level and you get closer to the birds. And I avoid boat trips for photography if the water's rough. You're just really not going to succeed and you may get very seasick. If wading in the water is something you'd like to do, then you got to be aware of tidal changes. You want to watch out for rising water which can encroach upon your camera. When I did this seal picture, it was in Iceland and I waded out into some icy water to take that picture. And I got a couple nice pictures of him kind of sleeping there on a rock. And then I noticed that he's kind of moving and the seaweed's kind of moving. And I'm starting to worry a little and I'm wondering what's happening. And I look down at my tripod and I see the water levels rising very rapidly towards my camera. Obviously, I had to retreat. The neat thing about it was he was curious. He came and swam by me before leaving the area. So do several other ducks. So animals can be very curious, particularly if you're in the water. Monopods or tripods can pick up vibrations from the boat's motor when it's engaged. So avoid any direct contact of your lens or your tripod with the boat surface, or you got to find a way to dampen the vibrations with some kind of rubber mat, beanbag arm. It's best to handhold the lens. Shallow draft pontoon boats can be great for photography if the operator can beach the boat in slightly shallow water or nose it against the shoreline. It can be very stable. Where possible with my photo workshops, I work with small groups anyway, and I'll rent small boats. I'll charter them. And it's perfect. I like boats that have a hard bottom, so I'm not real keen on Zodiacs because I like the people to be able to move about to get the best shots of the subject wherever he may be. And it might be one side or it might be on the other side. And the captains that I pick and that I'll work with are the ones that are best in terms of positioning the boat so that we get the best shooting opportunities in terms of light or background and angle. You can use your car as a mobile blind. We'll talk about a little bit where in a minute. But you can stabilize the lens often using a beanbag. You can use that beanbag on the car windowsill. You can use it on the hood of the car. You can use it on the roof. I'm not real keen of using it on the window unless it's really, really stable. You want to make sure you turn off that engine to reduce any vibrations. The inside temperature where the lens is should kind of match the outside temperature. You don't want to go from a warm, moist area into cold where you might fog the lens and cause some other problems. I fill my bean bags with either rice, beans, or birdseed. Homemade bean bags work fine if you can get them to support the camera in the way you like. I have several that are just basically little rectangular bean bags that I use to stack on top of my main bean bag to give me a higher position so that I can shoot up to something that might be in a tree. You can also use those bean bags, however, on ground level for nice eye level view of your subject. And some companies will sell one like you see in the upper corner there. I believe that may be Lenscoat bean bag. And you can get other little devices like this little skimmer pod that you can slide across the sand and you can mount a Wimberley, say, head on top of it and be at a very low angle. If you don't have a beanbag, you can use a bent arm, a thick jacket, brace the camera against something that's stable. In the case of the lady down there, she's bracing the camera against her knees. The gentleman over there is bracing the camera against a pole. It could be a fence pole. Anything that's stable would work. Hand holding the lens gives you a lot of flexibility. Make sure you turn that image stabilization on. And for best results, take a burst of shots in rapid succession and use faster shutter speeds than you would normally use on a tripod. This is just to make up for the fact that you're not quite as steady as you would be on a tripod. Where are you going to use that beanbag? Well, you're going to put it on the windowsill maybe of your car because the car can act as a mobile blind. It's best where you have subjects that are used to seeing cars, like wildlife loops. You're often ignored. You can move back and forth with the subject, and it is great when the road is adjacent to some kind of waterway. Make sure, again, you turn off that engine of your car. Merritt Island, Chincoteague National Wildlife Refuge, Bosque Little Apache all have road systems that have waterways alongside them, and these shots were taken at those locations. And with that, this is the end of part 12. I hope you got some really good ideas that you can use in the field. It's fun photographing wildlife. It is certainly a great relaxation and diversion for me, plus you'll learn a lot. The next topic coming off is going to be the last in this series. It's part 13, Anticipating Action and Ethics and Safety in the Field. Don't forget to go to my website, ospreyphoto.com. You'll get a list of Zoom programs for camera clubs, blogs, schedule of my workshops and tours. The next great workshop that's coming up is the one in Newfoundland. I take 3 people on 2 separate tours. You see puffins, gannets, great landscapes, possibly moose, whales, etc. I hope you'll check out my newsletter. You can sign up for it on my website, or you can use that link that's below. It comes out free every 2 months or so. Has some interesting information on technique as well as maybe on locations and also my schedule. The link to the YouTube channel that has these programs on it is below. You can also access that through my website as well. If you missed some of the programs, you might want to go back and take a look at them. Or if you really liked one of the programs and you got some ideas from it, then you might want to repeat it. I certainly hope you come back again for this last of this exciting series on wildlife photography. Please sign up. Please stay in touch. I'll be back in maybe just about a month from now with a new program to finish off the series. And thank you so much for following me.